Today I want to show you all inspection points and things you can look for when buying used motorcycles. Whatever type of bike you're shopping for, the tips shown in this video will definitely help you out and make you a much more educated buyer. Before we get into the specifics, I highly recommend that you download the free buyer's guide that supplements this video so you can easily follow along. It's a great resource, completely free, and is a valuable reference. The first thing I like to look for when buying a used bike is the VIN number. If the VIN is scratched off or altered in any way, alarms are already going off in my head, and this is a sign the bike may have been stolen. If the VIN has been tampered with, I usually walk away and look for another deal. If the bike has a VIN number, ask the seller if they have any other documentation, such as a title, previous bill of sale, or anything else that helps confirm they own the bike. Once I've confirmed the VIN number is legit, I like to inspect the frame. The headstock is a good starting point. Look closely at weld joints and where gussets end for cracks. Proceed down the frame. Inspect all visible weld joints in the frame for cracks and keep your eyes peeled for dings and dents. Work your way from the front of the frame to the rear. I'll go through and show you on this frame where all those joints are. Be especially vigilant around the rear subframe mounts, the swing arm pivot area, and the rear shock mount. Once you've thoroughly inspected the frame, take a good look at the swing arm. Look around the weld joints which hold the rear axle on. Then look alongside of the swing arm for any cracks that have formed. Most important, look at the front of the swing arm where the pivot axle passes through for cracks. If you come across a bike that has cracks, large dents, or bends in the frame or swing arm, I would walk away from it. Even if a damaged area of a frame or a swing arm is properly repaired, the structural integrity of the part will still be compromised as the heat treatment and other material properties of the metal have been altered. With so many bikes on the market, it doesn't make sense to buy one that has major problems with two of the most critical parts. Once I've inspected the frame and swing arm, I'll do a general walk around on the bike and inspect the bodywork and seat. Starting at the front, I'll inspect the fender, making sure it is secure. From the fender, I'll move to the front fairing, headlights, windshield, mirrors, and turn signals. Feel to make sure none of these parts are loose and look for cracks and deep scratches. Inspect the instrument cluster and fairing mounting brackets. Make sure the instrument cluster isn't loose. Keep an eye out for fairing mounts that are cracked or bent, because this can mean the bike has been crashed or dropped. Make sure all the bodywork hardware is accounted for. Inspect the seams where the bodywork joins together. Keep an eye out for seams where the bodywork doesn't line up correctly, because oftentimes this will happen when bikes have been dropped or crashed. Carefully look over the fuel tank or tank cover for dents, scratches, and imperfections. Also make sure the tank is nice and secure to the frame. Check over the rear tail section. Make sure the tail or grab handles are not loose. Look over the turn signals, making sure they aren't damaged or loose, as well as the tail lights. There are certain spots on a motorcycle which give away if the bike has been crashed or dropped. Look for ground down hardware and deep parallel scratches along the outermost point of the bodywork or fuel tank. Some bikes come equipped with frame sliders or engine guards, and these can be checked for road rash. Scratched engine covers are another good indicator. Foot pegs may or may not be useful, as sometimes they can be ground down from aggressive riding. The muffler is another common part that will get scratched in the event of a crash or a drop. Scuffed or damaged bodywork is something you'll have to decide for yourself if you want to replace, as it doesn't have an effect on how well the bike will handle. The more important thing is that you determine if the bike has been crashed and proceed through the rest of the inspections cautiously if it has. If you're buying a sport bike, you may want to look it over carefully for signs indicating that it has been raced. While racing bodywork is a dead giveaway, more subtle clues can be found by looking for bolts that have been safety wired. Usually race organizations will require the front brake caliper bolts, the front axle pinch bolt, and the front axle, the engine oil fill cap, engine oil drain bolt, rear brake caliper bolts, radiator fill cap, rear axle nut, rear set bolts are all additional parts that are commonly safety wired on road racing or track day bikes. Personally, I don't mind buying bikes that have been raced, however the seller's story must line up with what I see, and there must be evidence that the seller or another mechanic maintained the bike at or above a level at which I would care for my own bike. Otherwise, I usually pass. The mechanical stress racing puts on an engine is high, and if the bike has not been meticulously maintained throughout its racing life, the next buyer may be getting an upcoming heap of problems if they're not careful. Feel around the cylinder head, cylinder, and radiators to determine if the bike has been started recently. Sometimes a warm engine will start easier than a cold one, and a seller will start a bike before you come to inspect the bike so that it starts easy for you. If the engine is warm, this may indicate that the bike has a starting problem which may require attention. Usually if a bike has trouble starting, something is going on with the fueling system. On carbureted bikes, the pilot jet could be partially clogged, and on injected bikes, there could be a problem with one of the injectors. The valve clearances could also be out of spec, or the engine may also have low compression. I don't particularly like coming across a bike that has been started prior to my arrival, and it makes me suspicious. Determining whether anything is truly wrong with the bike that has been started before you arrive will take some experience and good judgment as you proceed through your examination of the bike. After I've felt the engine, I'll work my way around the engine looking for leaks. Most signs of leaks will come at the lowest points of the sealing surfaces due to the effects of gravity. Start at the top of the engine and work your way down. Inspect the cylinder head cover gasket and cylinder head gaskets for leaks. On some models, the cylinders will be separate from the crankcases, so you'll want to check the cylinder base gasket as well. Proceed to check the clutch cover, the timing cover, and the oil pan for leaks as well. Be sure to check both sides of the engine carefully. As you look for leaks, look to see if any of the gaskets have been replaced and made from liquid gasket makers. Liquid gaskets are a cheap alternative to the correct cardboard gaskets and are a warning sign for me. The only place where liquid gaskets may be used correctly is between crankcase halves on some models, otherwise I consider them a cheap shortcut. If you find a bike with leaking crankcase halves, cylinder base gasket, or cylinder head gasket, I would be particularly wary. The amount of time and effort required to fix these problems is high, and as a buyer, these problems don't instill a lot of confidence in me that the bike has been well kept. Leaking cover gaskets are much easier to fix, and while not good, aren't too big of a problem. Checking the engine oil is one of the most important things to do when looking at a used bike. The engine oil level on most bikes should be checked when the bike is standing straight up. Some bikes will have a sight glass, and some may have a dipstick. On this Yamaha, there's a sight glass with a high and low mark. Make sure the oil is at or between the marks. If it's outside the marks, you may want to question the seller about the oil level. On some models, you may be able to dip the oil with a paper towel and inspect the condition of the oil. I'll demonstrate this on the Honda. Simply insert a piece of paper towel through the fill cap hole and dip the end into the oil. I'm going to compare this oil sample to new and old oil so you can see the differences. New engine oil is usually light amber in color, and as it lubricates the engine, it will become darker and darker. Next, I'll lay down a sample of old engine oil so you can see the difference in color as oil ages. For your reference, the engine oil that came out of the Honda has 3 hours of runtime on it. If you ever dip a bike and the oil comes out black, like the third sample, the obvious question to ask the seller is when the last time the oil was changed. Keeping motorcycles lubricated with fresh oil is extremely important, and if I see signs of neglect, such as old oil, I'm ready to move on and go shopping for a different bike. Lubricating an engine with old oil is hard on all the engine internals and prematurely wears parts out. Some bikes, such as Harleys and dirt bikes, may have a separate oil tank for the transmission oil. Be sure to inspect the transmission oil level and condition if the bike you're looking at has a separate oil tank for the transmission oil. Next, I'll check to see how full the cooling system is. This is easily done by locating the radiator overflow bottle and checking to make sure the coolant sits between the high and low marks on the bottle. Some bikes may not be equipped with an overflow bottle. If this is the case, simply remove the radiator cap and make sure the radiator is full. Remember to only remove the cap when the engine is cold, because hot coolant could spray out and burn you as the cooling system depressurizes on a warm engine. A handful of things can cause the coolant level to be low. First, there could be a leak in one of the radiators. The bike may have a coolant leak in the cylinder head and coolant is being burned, or the water pump seal may be leaking and coolant is either leaking out the weep hole or into the engine oil. We invite you to download our free used motorcycle buyer's guide by following the link in the description. The guide will take you through all the necessary steps of buying a great used motorcycle and teach you how to avoid a lemon. We'll also send you an additional 18 video tips. Good luck shopping for your next used bike.